The heat before the storm. The city always smelled like rain and metal, not because it rained much, but because it always threatened to. The clouds would roll in, heavy and gray, as if the sky itself was holding back something it didn't want to say. Emma Reyes stood at the window of her tiny apartment above the bakery, the glow of the ovens rising through the floorboards. Her apron was still tied around her waist, streaked with flour, and streaked again with something that looked suspiciously like dried tears. She hadn't cried for months, not since the night her mother died, but that night had burned through her life like a silent fire. And even now, years later, she could still smell the smoke of it. Emma wasn't weak. She wasn't the kind of woman who broke easily. Life had taught her to knead pain into strength, just like dough: fold it, punch it, stretch it, let it rise again. But some things rise too high. Some things burst, and in the quiet spaces between her shifts, she would feel the shape of her anger small, steady, and burning like the pilot light of the ovens downstairs. The man who took everything. His name was Aaron Blake. He had been her boss, her mentor, her secret. When she was 22, fresh out of culinary school, he had found her working in a small-town cafe, saw her hands move through dough like a composer's through a piano, and told her she was wasting her talent. He offered her a position in his chain of boutique bakeries, The Hearth. It was supposed to be a dream, and for a while, it was. He praised her, pushed her, promoted her. He told her she was different from the rest, that she had fire in her hands. She believed him, until she found out the truth. Aaron didn't just use her recipes, her designs, her labor. He used her. He made her believe they were partners, that her name would be next to his on the new flagship store opening in the city. Instead, she woke up one morning to find her name scrubbed off the contracts, her ideas stolen, and her reputation quietly destroyed. When she tried to fight back, the legal team he hired buried her in paperwork. When she spoke up, the PR manager called her unstable. And when she refused to back down, he released private messages, twisted and edited, that made her look like the one who had crossed lines. She lost everything: her job, her home, her name. Aaron Blake kept his empire. Emma Reyes disappeared. The quiet years. She moved into the small apartment above a struggling bakery in a forgotten part of town. The owner, Mrs. Cortez, let her work nights and pay rent in flour and sweat. Days turned into years, and though her hands never stopped creating, her heart stopped believing. She kept her head down, her recipes simple, her world small, but pain has a strange way of fermenting. It doesn't rot, it rises. And one day, when the TV flickered with the news of the Hearth's 10th anniversary, showing Aaron's smiling face and his perfect family and his new line of artisan signature desserts, all based on her creations, something inside her snapped back to life. Not rage, not grief, something colder. Purpose. The return. Emma went back to the city. She didn't storm into his bakery or throw accusations in public. She didn't write open letters or post online. No, she came quietly, like a shadow crawling back under the door that once shut her out. She started by getting a job at one of the smaller Hearth branches, the kind of place Aaron never visited, but his influence still ruled. She changed her last name to Reed. She worked nights again, the way she used to. No one recognized her. But she studied everything: the supply chain, the finances, the recipes. She knew where the cracks were, because she had built the foundation herself. The spark. It started with something small: a cake order that went missing, a shipment that was late, a recipe that turned out wrong in 3 cities at once. No one suspected Emma. She was invisible, the quiet night baker who cleaned up after everyone else. But every small mistake was deliberate, calculated, precise, and untraceable. Aaron's company started losing contracts. Investors began asking questions. And while the corporate structure trembled under the weight of bad luck, Emma began something else, something personal. She started an underground bakery called Ash and Honey. Anonymous. Online only. Every dessert she sold was named after an emotion she'd learned to live with: bitterness, longing, guilt, grace, and soon, Food critics began whispering about it. People said it was the hearth's lost soul reborn. Aaron noticed. The encounter, the first time he saw her again, he didn't recognize her. She'd changed not just her hair or her name, but the energy around her. She carried silence like a weapon now. Aaron visited her pop-up bakery in disguise, curious about the mysterious chef behind Ash and Honey. When he saw the logo, a small ember in a jar of golden syrup, something flickered in his eyes. Familiarity. Fear. He asked, "Who designed that?" She smiled, the kind of smile that held back a decade of truth. "I did." And for a moment, he didn't breathe. Perfect. Here begins the next part. Part 2. The fire rekindled. Continuing directly where we left off. This section deepens Emma's confrontation with her past, showing her emotional rebirth, Aaron's unraveling, and the careful, revenge plan that becomes unstoppable. Let's dive in cinematic, emotional, and full of quiet intensity. The fire rekindled. Aaron Blake stood frozen in front of the counter. The hum of the refrigerator, the only sound between them. 10 years had passed, but time had done strange things to him. His hair had silvered. His posture was stiff, but his eyes, the same calculating blue, flickered as though caught between disbelief and fear. Emma wiped her hands on her apron, calm, controlled, her heart thudding softly under her ribs. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. Aaron tried to laugh, but it came out brittle. "Emma?" His voice stumbled over the name as if it didn't belong in his mouth anymore. "You're alive," she tilted her head. "People don't usually die just because you erase them." For a second, something inside him faltered the practiced confidence, the charm that had once disarmed her. He opened his mouth, but she had already turned away, reaching for a cooling tray of honey-glazed croissants. "Do you want something?" she asked, tone polite, detached. "Or did you just come to look?" I didn't know this was you," he managed. "Ash and Honey. Everyone's been talking about it. You're behind this?" She shrugged. "You always said I had a gift." Her calm was terrifying. Because it wasn't bitterness. It wasn't revenge yet. It was precision, like a surgeon who already knew where to cut. Aaron swallowed hard, trying to recover his poise. "Emma, listen. I know things ended badly, but you have to understand." She turned, meeting his eyes. "Understand what? That you stole everything I built and called it your own? That you broke me so I couldn't speak? That you made sure everyone thought I was unstable?" He flinched, looking around 2 customers in the corner, sipping lattes, oblivious. "Emma, not here." Her voice softened, almost tender. "Why? This is where truth finally smells better than your lies. The cracks begin to show." Aaron left the bakery that day pale and sweating, the weight of her presence gnawing at him. For the first time in a decade, he couldn't control the narrative. He couldn't predict what she would do, and that scared him more than any lawsuit ever had. Emma watched from the window as he crossed the street, clutching his coat too tightly. When his reflection disappeared into the glass door of a taxi, she whispered, "Now it begins." The unraveling. Over the next few months, Emma played her role perfectly. The mysterious baker, who refused interviews, who spoke only through her desserts. Each new pastry carried a name that spread like wildfire online. Resilience, confession, inheritance. And each one carried a secret ingredient that traced directly back to the hearth's proprietary recipes. Aaron's lawyers noticed. His board noticed. The public noticed. Because soon, people began comparing. Who was copying whom? Was Ash and Honey inspired by the hearth? Or was the hearth built on lies? The empire Aaron had built started shaking gently. At first, then violently. But Emma wasn't done yet. The ghost in the machine. She had found someone, a hacker named Mara, a friend from culinary school who now worked in digital forensics. Mara owed her a favor. Together, they uncovered years of hidden communications, suppressed emails, and contracts, proof of how Aaron had falsified authorship and stolen Emma's recipes. But Emma didn't leak them to the press. Not yet. She wanted Aaron to feel every stage of collapse, denial, fear, paranoia, isolation, before truth buried him. She started sending anonymous packages. One arrived at his office with an old photograph, Emma and Aaron, side by side, holding a golden pastry trophy. The caption said, "You can't bake without fire." Another contained a single recipe card, one that Aaron had stolen, written in Emma's original handwriting. He began losing sleep. He started drinking again. His wife, Claire, noticed. "Who's sending these?" she asked one night. He lied. "Old competitor, trying to rattle me." "But Lees don't age well. The mirror cracks." Weeks passed. Ash and honey exploded. Online people traveled miles just to taste Emma's creations. Food magazines called her the Phantom Baker. She never appeared in interviews. She never showed her face in videos. The mystery became part of the brand, part of the myth. Meanwhile, the Hearth's investors began withdrawing. Whispers spread about plagiarism, about ethics, about scandal. Aaron was summoned to emergency board meetings where his voice shook, his excuses thin. He was unraveling. And one night, when his phone buzzed, he found a message that made his blood run cold. "It's almost ready to burn." He dropped the phone, breathing hard, looking around the empty room. For the first time in his life, Aaron Blake, the man who built empires, was terrified of a woman he once thought he owned. The choice. Emma stood in her kitchen at 3 a.m., hands dusted in sugar and salt, staring at a single USB drive on the counter. Inside it, everything. Proof? Emails, legal documents, enough to destroy him forever. But as she looked at it, something inside her trembled, because revenge was supposed to make her feel free. And instead, she felt something else: grief. Grief for the years she'd lost, for the version of herself that once believed in him, for the innocence that would never rise again. She sank onto the stool, tears stinging her eyes, whispering to the quiet room, "Isn't this what you wanted, Emma? Isn't this what you worked for?" The oven timer beeped. She stood up, wiped her tears, and whispered, "Yes, but not like this." She didn't want to destroy him with fire. She wanted him to watch himself crumble. The gala. The Hearth's 10th anniversary gala was the talk of the city, a televised event hosted at their flagship restaurant. Aaron would be there, center stage, smiling for cameras. Emma would be there too, not as a guest, but as the head caterer. The irony was almost poetic. She'd secured the contract through a fake catering company registered under Mara's name. No one even checked. When Aaron walked into the ballroom that night, he didn't see her at first. He didn't see the logo on the catering trays, Ash and Honey, not until it was too late. Halfway through the event, a journalist approached him. "Mr. Blake, can you comment on the allegations that several of your recipes were taken from another chef?" His smile froze. "That's nonsense." The journalist smiled back. "Oh, then maybe you should see this." She handed him a phone. On the screen, a video. It showed Aaron, younger, in his old office, dictating to his assistant, "Take Emma's name off that document. She's too emotional. No one will believe her anyway." The room swayed. Cameras flashed. And behind the catering table, Emma watched him break one crack at a time. The fall of fire. The world slowed down that night. The cameras, the flashing lights, the whispers, they all blurred into a haze of white noise. Aaron's face on the big screen trembled, the video looping again and again. The crowd murmured. Journalists whispered into their microphones. And for the first time in years, the mighty Aaron Blake had no words left. He tried to speak, his mouth opened, but only panic came out. I don't know what this is. It's fake." But the crowd had already turned. The investors, the chefs, the same people who once hung on his every word now stepped back, their expressions cold, distant. I stood behind the catering table, hidden in plain sight, wearing my Ash and Honey apron, my hands trembling just slightly. The scent of caramel and citrus filled the air, my own desserts on every plate. My heart beat in rhythm with the room's tension. He looked around, wild-eyed. And then he saw me. Our eyes met through the crowd. Recognition hit him like a bullet. He froze. For a second, everything else faded: the murmurs, the lights, the music. It was just us. 10 years of silence collapsing into one look. He mouthed something, a single word I could barely read. "Why?" And I smiled, not with cruelty, not even with satisfaction, but with a strange, haunting calm. Because, I whispered, though he couldn't hear it. You taught me that silence doesn't save you, it buries you. The collapse. By the next day morning, the hearth was trending on every news outlet. Aaron Blake accused of intellectual theft and harassment. The video had gone viral, a perfect storm of scandal and karma. He tried to fight it, of course. He called it slander. He claimed deepfakes. He threatened lawsuits. But the internet doesn't forgive arrogance, and it never forgets. Within a week, his investors pulled out. The flagship restaurant closed its doors. Reporters camped outside his home, shouting questions that no longer had answers. And through it all, I stayed quiet. Not a word, not a single interview, not even a public statement. Because revenge wasn't about screaming louder. It was about being heard without ever having to speak again. The visit! 2 weeks later, there was a knock on the door of Ash and Honey. It was early morning, the street was still half asleep. And when I opened the door, I saw him. Aaron Blake. He looked smaller. His eyes were hollow, his clothes wrinkled, his once slick hair messy like he'd been running from ghosts. He held a manila envelope in his hand. Can we talk? He asked, voice quiet, almost pleading. I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to slam the door. Another part, the one that still remembered the girl who once loved him, wanted to listen. So I stepped aside. He entered slowly, looking around the bakery like it was a church. He stopped near the counter, his eyes lingering on the pastries, the same ones he used to claim as his own. You did all this, he said softly. I did, I replied. He nodded, eyes wet. I ruined everything. Yours, mine, everything. I didn't respond. He set the envelope on the counter and pushed it toward me. I wanted to give you this. It's the deed to the hearth's original kitchen. It's yours now. You earned it. Hell, it was always yours. I stared at it. The paper that once symbolized everything I lost now sat in front of me, trembling in his hands. Why are you doing this? I asked. Because I can't undo what I did, he said. But maybe I can stop pretending I didn't destroy the best thing that ever happened to me. He looked up broken, human, desperate. And for a moment, I saw the boy he used to be. The one who once believed in my dream before envy poisoned it. Emma, he whispered. I'm sorry. Tears stung my eyes, but I didn't cry. Instead, I nodded slowly. I know. He turned to leave, pausing at the door. You won, Emma. I looked at the rising sunlight spilling through the glass. No, I said quietly. I survived. The ember of mercy. After he left, I stood alone in the bakery for a long time. The morning light touched everything softly, the golden crusts, the glass jars, the warm air thick with sugar. I picked up the envelope, opened it. The kitchen deed was there, along with a small note. It read, You were always the fire. I was just the smoke trying to hide it. A tear slipped down my cheek, because for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt release. That's what revenge never tells you. It doesn't end with triumph. It ends with quiet, with stillness, with the echo of your own heartbeat whispering that you finally made it out. The new beginning. Months passed. Ash and Honey became more than a bakery. It became a movement, a space for women chefs who had been silenced, belittled, or stolen from. I started a mentorship program, the Ember Initiative. Every year, we funded 3 by women to open their own kitchens, free from the chains of manipulation and theft that once burned me. Every morning, I'd watch them laugh, measure flour, and hum along to music. And I'd think of that young girl I used to be, standing in a kitchen too small for her dreams. Now she had room to grow. Now, she had fire enough for all of them. Epilogue. The taste of freedom. One evening, long after closing time, I walked to the window and looked out at the city. The lights shimmered like stars, and I thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the silence, the fire, and the healing. I whispered to the glass, I didn't destroy you, Aaron. You destroyed yourself. The wind outside carried the scent of fresh bread and honey. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang. I smiled, turned off the lights, and whispered the same words I'd written on my first recipe card. Years ago, the one he'd stolen. The one I'd finally reclaimed. Every wound leaves a flavor. Some bitter, some sweet. But the strongest hearts learn how to taste both. And for the first time in 10 years, I felt full. Perfecta. Here it is. The Afterglow. Final chapter. Cinematic, emotional, and voiceover ready, the ending of Emma's story. Fade in. The city hums in the distance. Neon signs flicker outside the cafe window where Emma sits. A cup of black coffee steaming in her hands. Her reflection stares back at her from the glass, older, calmer, but marked by every scar the past had carved. It's been 8 months since Jake was fired. 8 months since she'd sped out of that parking lot, heart hammering against the steering wheel, leaving behind the echo of his fists pounding on the window. But the memory, it still visits her sometimes. At first, it came like a storm. She'd wake up drenched in sweat, hearing phantom knocks, reliving the helplessness of that night. Then, little by little, the fear started to fade, replaced by something else. Clarity. The quiet aftermath. Life at the restaurant changed. The toxic cloud that had lingered over the team finally lifted. Laughter started to return to the break room. Music played again while they cleaned up after closing. The women, the ones who had once whispered and winced when Jake entered, started standing taller. It wasn't instant healing, but it was real. The general manager, Lisa, took Emma aside one evening. "I should have listened sooner," she said, her voice heavy with guilt. Emma didn't reply right away. She just stared at the coffee machine dripping into the pot. Finally, she said softly, "We all should have." It wasn't anger anymore. It was acceptance. The viral ghost. One afternoon, while Emma was at home scrolling through her phone, a familiar headline flashed across her screen. "Man causes highway chows after road rage incident goes viral." The thumbnail, a grainy freeze frame of Jake mid-scream, his face twisted in fury, hit her like a punch. The video showed him stumbling out of a car, punching another driver's window, nearly getting hit by traffic as horns blared. She watched in stunned silence. Then, she smiled. Not a cruel smile, but one of peace. Because karma had done its job. No plotting, no manipulation, no revenge plan. Just the universe, balancing itself. For so long, she had thought justice meant taking action. Now, she realized sometimes it means walking away and letting life reveal who people really are. The night shift reborn. 6 months later, Emma became assistant manager. The title didn't matter to her, but the respect did. She trained new hires herself, mostly young women in their early 20s, nervous and eager. On her first day as their trainer, she said something that would become her quiet motto. "You don't owe anyone your silence. Not your boss, not your coworker, not anyone. If someone crosses a line, you draw one back." They listened, and she could see it in their eyes. That spark of empowerment. Emma had turned her fear into something solid, something useful. The unexpected visit. One rainy evening, Emma stayed late, doing inventory alone. The parking lot outside glistened under the streetlights, empty, except for her car. As she stepped out with her keys, she froze. A man stood by the dumpster. For a heartbeat, her chest tightened him. But no, it wasn't Jake. Just a homeless man collecting cans. Still, her pulse raced. The sound of rain hitting the metal awning reminded her of that night, the pounding, the darkness, the fear. She walked quickly to her car, got in, locked the doors, and just sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel, breathing shallow. She could have just driven off, but she didn't. Instead, she whispered to herself, "You're safe now." She turned on the headlights, illuminating the man by the dumpster. He flinched, then nodded politely. She reached into her purse, pulled out a $5 bill, and stepped back out into the rain. The man looked surprised. "Ma'am, I didn't—" "It's okay," she said. "Just stay safe, all right?" That night, when she got home, she cried. Not from fear, from release. The podcast invitation. A few weeks later, a coworker sent her a message. "Hey, Em. My friend runs this podcast about toxic workplaces. You should totally tell your story." At first, she hesitated. Her story was personal, raw, but something in her wanted to be heard. The recording session was quiet, intimate. The host asked softly, "When did you realize it wasn't your fault?" Emma's voice trembled, but she smiled. "When I stopped replaying that night in my head as a moment of fear, and started seeing it as the night I took my power back." Silence filled the studio, the kind that feels heavy, sacred. The episode went viral within a week. Hundreds of women wrote in, saying her words helped them leave toxic jobs, confront harassment, or find courage to speak up. Emma read every message. Some made her cry, others made her laugh. One simply said, "Because you spoke, I wasn't afraid to say no." And that was worth everything. The road back. One weekend, Emma decided to drive out of town the same road Jake had once begged her to take. The highway stretched endlessly, the fields gold under the sunset. She rolled the windows down, letting the wind whip her hair. Every mile felt like shedding another layer of the past. She stopped at a small diner halfway there, the kind with flickering neon signs and pie that tasted like someone's grandmother made it. The waitress smiled at her and said, "Rough day, honey?" Emma laughed softly. "Not anymore." She sat at a window seat, watching the traffic. For the first time, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel scared. She felt free. The letter to herself, back home. She opened her old journal, the one she hadn't touched since that night. The last entry read, "I don't know how to feel safe again." She smiled sadly and picked up a pen. Underneath it, she wrote, "I do now." Because safety isn't about where you are. It's about who you've become. Epilogue. The echo fades. Months later, the restaurant threw a small holiday party. Laughter filled the air. Music played, and Emma found herself dancing carefree, alive. Someone asked her, "Hey, do you ever think about him?" She paused, glanced toward the parking lot through the window. The same lot, the same spot. Then she smiled and said, "Not really. He's just a ghost now. And ghosts only haunt you if you let them." The camera would fade out there if this were a movie, her silhouette against the glow of Christmas lights. Laughter echoing softly. But the truth went deeper. She had learned something profound. That revenge doesn't always look like payback. Sometimes it looks like peace. That walking away can be louder than screaming back. That survival, quiet, strong, unapologetic survival, is the sweetest revenge of all. For months, I thought standing up for myself meant confrontation, that I had to fight to prove I was strong. But now I know strength can be silent. It can be a locked door, a calm voice saying no, a car driving away in the night. Because when someone tries to control you, hurt you, or break you, the most powerful thing you can do is choose yourself. My name is Emma Reyes, and this was the night I stopped being afraid. The night I drove away and never looked back.